Living in a big city and working in video production, I find that a flexible and portable yet powerful tool is a must-have. I've always seen a lot of laptops in this space, but from my personal experience, they kind of end up sitting in my bag for hours until I can find a seat to actually get a chance to use them. Tablets allow for a much more flexible style and are great for certain tasks, but they can quickly hit a limit for professional workflows. And hybrid devices always feel like they inherit the worst of both worlds. The best experience I've actually had came from a device marketed towards gamers,
GPD WIN Max 2.
which is why it may be flying under your radar. But it was a literal game changer for me, redefining how and where I can work. Since I have a desktop for heavier workloads, my needs on the go are threefold: portability, flexibility, and performance. While there are plenty of great devices that excel at one or even two areas, I found that it's always the compromise in the third that makes for an unbalanced experience, where I get slowed down, and eventually that has me running back to my desktop, fragmenting my workflow, and limiting how or what I can work on. So I wanted a more balanced experience that could actually hold its own in a variety of different situations. This is exactly what I found with the GPD WIN Max. Well, at least for the most part, no device is perfect, and a little bit more on that later, but the unique combination of a traditional laptop design and gaming controller interface creates this balance that I never knew I needed, but was definitely looking for in my video production workflow. Seeing as the form factor hasn't changed in a few years, I wanted to give my long-term thoughts using it as a daily device or as my travel companion, but also talk a little bit about the longevity of a device like this and what the future might hold, for good or for bad. For some background, GPD is a small Chinese manufacturer of mostly gaming-centric Windows devices. While I'm not a gamer necessarily, I've always looked for different ways to improve my mobile workflow, and first took an interest in one of their mini laptops back in 2019, which was definitely optimized for portability, but it couldn't really balance the versatility and performance aspects. But in 2020, with the release of the original WIN Max, I found that a joystick was an elegant alternative to mouse or touch, and with a few shortcuts, my workflow could be adapted to all kinds of different situations without much compromise, keeping my work flowing in environments where traditional devices would slow down or just not be realistic to work with. I still love the size of the original WIN Max because it goes basically unnoticed in a bag, which still amazes me, but it just fell short in a couple of places that made it kind of a begrudging choice for a daily device. And that's where the changes in the second iteration struck such a remarkable balance for me that I pretty much carry it with me everywhere. So here's why. Portability is super important and necessary to make the gamepad usable, but it goes beyond just size and weight. Because the GPD has both a built-in SD and micro SD card slot, as well as room for an additional NVMe SSD drive, it's easy to transfer media on the fly or work with 5 terabytes of internal storage without any dongles or adapters. This means you can quickly and easily transition from the keyboard to a touchscreen or gamepad without sacrificing how or what you're working on. I also opted for the model with 4G connectivity, which, to be honest, I don't really use too much, but it does add the option for a more portable experience, allowing for connectivity without a hotspot. The battery life is not what you're going to get with something like an iPad, but I still found it to be portable enough for my workflow, where I can work for about 4 to 6 hours outside of the house on writing, editing, and web browsing, and the rest of the time I'm plugged in on an external monitor. While the screen itself is much improved over the original WIN Max form factor, it's not necessarily going to be the most color accurate display, so I tend to use the WIN Max 2 more as a way to rough cut a video or back up and sort through a photo catalog on my way home, but anything having to do with color correction, I'll be doing on a proper monitor. And in many ways, that's what's so appealing to me about the WIN Max, because I can work on the same project or task across a variety of different environments or styles, where other devices often felt like I was forcing myself to use them in situations that they weren't exactly meant for. So I find that friction is reduced and I can get more work done. And with 5 USB ports, HDMI, and a 3.5mm headphone jack, the WIN Max can tackle a ton of tasks. While not necessarily an everyday need for me, thanks to its small but impactful footprint, I've been able to incorporate the WIN Max into a portable multicam live streaming setup and in my presentations during workshops that other devices would be way too cumbersome or bulky because I have a ton of other equipment to bring with me. But of course, none of this means anything if you can't actually get work done. Keyboards have been a pain point for me in the past, being too small or non-standard, which can really affect my ability to get into a flow state, but luckily the WIN Max 2 has a layout that shaves off as much as possible in its size without compromising the essentials. Full windows means that you get a familiar yet customizable experience and access to industry standard apps, and my 2022 full spec model feels up to the task of editing YouTube videos or short films in Premiere or DaVinci Resolve. But of course, none of this means anything if you can't actually get work done. So I found all of that adds up to this really elegant balance that helps me actually get more work done, but balance doesn't mean perfection, and there are plenty of trade-offs that I have to put up with on a daily basis with the WIN Max. While 5 USB ports sounds nice, I found that it's not always a practical solution to, say, copy data from an SD card to multiple external drives at the same time. Transfer speeds tend to slow down dramatically when you do this, so I'm guessing most of these ports share the same controller or bus, which may be okay for some gaming accessories, but makes it less useful for my needs as a creator. The WIN Max 2 also seems to have digitizer support, which normally would be right up my alley, but without a sturdy hinge, I feel like this kind of thing is only limited to document markup or some light photo retouching. GPD actually offers some really interesting and innovative laptops, like one with a swivel screen and another with a dual screen, which I think would be fantastic for drawing or writing, and a perfect pair for the joysticks for a more comprehensive experience. The microSD card slot also has a known issue where it will randomly disconnect even when in use, which can be pretty annoying and interrupt work, which I haven't been able to find a solution for, and I do experience the occasional hard crashes when pushing the limits on a larger project, and of course you also have to deal with modern Windows updates and their spontaneity. But also, I've had this problem where closing the lid doesn't necessarily do what I outlined in my power plan. At least not all the time. As far as these most recent points, I don't know how much of it is Windows itself or the pairing with GPD's hardware, but in general, you shouldn't expect a perfect or refined experience out of the box with something like this. Even with the controller remapping, there is some trial and error to find the right balance, so I found approaching the WIN Max with more of a tinkerer's mindset is a really good way to enjoy what it has to offer. Ultimately, the WIN Max 2 was revolutionary for my workflow. Of course, it's always nice to have a couple of extra features here and there, but in a way, I don't know how much more GPD can actually innovate in this space. At the same time, there are 2 major hurdles on the horizon for GPD if they want to compete more directly in the creator space. While there's still a bottleneck for professional workflows in terms of hardware on mobile devices, the software bottleneck is disappearing quickly. With powerful yet intuitive software becoming widely available, I'm questioning how long I'll be working on the GPD compared to, say, an iPad, especially with a lot of that software benefiting greatly from AI features that cut down production time significantly. For now, a lot of these tools are integrating really nicely into traditional workflows for video production, so it stacks well with the benefits I already experience with the WIN Max 2, but what happens when we're no longer constrained to that kind of traditional workflow? So the revolution that's coming probably has less to do with hardware and more to do with how we work in the first place, which is going to open up video production to more people in more places. I hope you found the video to be interesting and informative. I'd love to explore more devices like this in the future that have unique hardware solutions for different creative workflows, but I've also really been diving into what it's like to edit on iPads using, say, DaVinci Resolve. So hopefully I'll be able to get my thoughts together on that and have a video out as soon as possible. Anyways, as always, thank you so much for watching.